When my wife died, my son looked me dead in the eye and said, "You can't bring Mom back, and Megan's birthday only happens once a year." Ah yes, the great circle of life: birth, marriage, death, and Megan's birthday bash with a chocolate fountain. His words hit me like a frying pan to the face, except with less dignity. The next morning, as if nothing had happened, he came trotting over with some vital request. Vital. Right. Like curing cancer, or I don't know, maybe attending his mother's funeral. But no, apparently the truly vital thing was making sure Megan's balloons matched the napkins. And I thought, this is it. My chance to redeem myself. My chance to prove that when it comes to holding a grudge, I can be just as petty as the next man. So, 8:30 a.m. sharp, I rang Kyle. Hands trembling, Ty strangling me for the third time. Margaret's coffee cup still sat on the counter, lipstick faint enough to remind me she had, in fact, once been alive. The house felt hollow without her humming, which, by the way, I used to complain about. Funny how silence is apparently worse. For rings later, my darling son picked up, sounding like he'd been dragged through a nightclub backwards. Music thumping, Megan shrieking about decorations, and Kyle, oh bless him, clearing his throat like a man about to deliver Shakespeare, when all he actually had to say was, "Dad, I told you yesterday. Megan's birthday party is tonight. We've been planning this for months." Months. A whole strategic operation. You'd think it was the Normandy landings, not a 30-something's birthday. I said, "Kyle, your mother's funeral is today. Once in a lifetime event. You know, quite literally." To which he replied, and I quote, "Look, Mom's not coming back. But Megan's birthday only happens once a year." And there it was. The sentence that made me wish I'd invested in noise-canceling headphones back in '92. He added something about caterers and bands, because obviously priorities. And then, as if to seal the deal, he gave me the glorious dial tone. Nothing says "love you, Dad," like hanging up halfway through your mother's funeral reminder. So I sat there, perfectly still, for 3 minutes. I know it was 3 minutes, because the clock ticked like a smug metronome. At 8:47 a.m. Margaret's glasses lay next to the phone. My wedding ring caught the sunlight. All very poetic, if you're into that sort of thing. Personally, I just felt like stabbing the wall with the biro I used to scratch Kyle's name off the funeral program. Pallbearer, it said. Not anymore, sunshine. Crossed out with the enthusiasm of a man finally deleting spam emails. At the cemetery, the faces turned. Where's Kyle? Patricia, Margaret's sister, professional busybody, kept asking. I had my line ready. Important commitments. Which sounded respectable until you remembered those commitments involve party hats and a disco ball. 23 people came to say goodbye to Margaret. Not one of them was her son. The casket looked heavier without him, though perhaps that was just me imagining the weight of disappointment. The pastor spoke about eternal love. Mrs. Henderson whispered, she was so proud of Kyle. I nodded, like the dutiful widower, while inside I screamed, oh, was she? How lovely. Maybe he'll carve that onto the balloon arch. And then the dirt started falling. On the casket. On my patience. On every last illusion that our son gave even half a toss. Driving home, I gripped the wheel so tight my knuckles looked like a bad plaster job. The passenger seat sat empty. Margaret's seat, her Honda, her rules. I turned off the radio when her favorite song came on, because I'm not into emotional masochism before tea. The house welcomed me back like an empty museum. No humming. No background telly. Just me, the echo of 40 years, and the curtains Margaret hated, but I never changed. Congratulations, Alan. You win Husband of the Year. Posthumously. I sat down in the brown leather armchair, the one she said clashed with everything. She was right, of course. She was always right. But now the bloody thing will outlive me, won't it? Immortal, like Kyle's talent for missing chemo appointments. And just when I thought the evening couldn't get any worse, I found her Bible. Bookmark Psalms. A note fluttered out. My dearest Alan, please don't let Kyle forget us. We gave him everything we had. I hope that was enough. All my love, M. Enough? Well, Margaret, apparently not. But don't worry. He's at Megan's birthday, and I hear the cake was marvelous. Every A+ Kyle ever brought home, Margaret celebrated like he'd split the atom. She even wrote little notes on his report cards. So proud. Our brilliant boy. Brilliant at spending, maybe. Should have trained him in banking fraud. At least then he'd be earning something. The graduation photos were the worst. Kyle in his cap and gown, smiling like he'd invented higher education. Degree. Paid for with Margaret's double shifts, and my weekends spent working instead of living. Total cost, $200,000. For a smile. Bargain really. And then I thought, why stop there? Out came the calculator. The house down payment, $350,000. His wedding to Megan, $75,000. His first car, $35,000. Graduate school, the one he dropped out of to find himself in Europe, $48,000. Spoiler alert, he found Ibiza instead. Oh, and the emergency loans. Not for, emergencies like medical bills. No, these were for holidays, Megan's retail therapy, and one failed business venture that basically translated to, Megan tried Etsy and got bored. By the time I was done, the grand total stood at $847,000. Nearly $1 million. An entire life's work, shoveled into the gaping maw of Kyle's entitlement. Honestly, if money could scream, mine would have filed a restraining order. Meanwhile, Margaret's coffee mug was still in the dishwasher, lipstick faded, but hanging on like it knew what grief was. Her romance novel, still open on the nightstand. Bookmark, waiting for eyes that would never turn another page. Get-well cards from friends cluttered the kitchen. People who cared more about her than her own son did. The irony stung harder than the funeral buffet. I thought of my own father. Hard man. Gave me nothing but a handshake and the immortal words, build your own character. Translation, suffer quietly, lad. Maybe he was right. Maybe character is just what's left when everyone's leached the money out of you. Darkness fell, but I didn't bother with lights. What's the point? A car pulled into the driveway. Engine idling. For one delusional moment, I thought it might be Kyle. Of course it wasn't. Drove off again. Probably Uber Eats, looking for number 42. By 6 a.m., I was at my desk. Mahogany. Very respectable, very tragic. Files laid out in precise rows. Kyle's education. Kyle's house. Kyle's wedding. A mausoleum of receipts. My coffee grew cold, because apparently grief also kills your ability to drink hot beverages. I started digging. 15 years of transactions, every one labeled transfer to Kyle or loan. Kyle emergency. Emergency meaning Megan spotted a handbag she simply couldn't live without. College tuition, £52,000 a year for 4 years. I wrote those checks while Kyle partied through Iowa State like a fresher on a lifelong gap year. Graduate school, another $48,000 for an MBA he never used. He dropped out to find himself in Europe. Still missing. Last seen in a Spanish nightclub. The European trip itself. $35,000. Temporary, he said. Until he was established. Established as what? A professional disappointment? And then the house. That broke us. He stood in our living room, Megan's ring glinting, and said, we found the perfect place, but we're a little short. Short by $350,000, as it turned out. But family helps family, he said, hugging me like Judas in a suit. Margaret's secret notebook fell out of the files. Every sacrifice scribbled in her handwriting. Anniversary dinner canceled. Needed $5,000 for Kyle's car repair. Postponed doctor's appointment. Kyle needed money. Bought generic groceries. Kyle's wedding more expensive than expected. The last note gutted me. We gave Kyle everything. I hope he remembers us kindly. Kindly? Margaret, he remembers us like an ATM with dementia. The calculator climbed. $847,000. My father gave me $20 and a handshake when I left home. I built everything myself. Kyle treated my life's work like monopoly money, and he didn't even say thank you. At Christmas, he even called my company a family business, like he'd built it beside me instead of waltzing into a cushy position I created for him. Megan nodded along, probably mentally redecorating my office already. That's when something shifted. My grief put on a hard hat and clocked out. This wasn't sadness anymore. This was business. And business I could handle. I looked at Margaret's photo, her worried eyes watching me. Maybe we're doing too much for him, she'd whispered once. Well, congratulations, love. You win the understatement Olympics. The phone rang. Caller ID, Kyle. Of course. Timing impeccable as always. I let it ring 4 times, because petty victories are all I have left. Then I answered. Hey, Dad, he said, voice cheerful in that oily way that usually means open your wallet. He didn't mention the funeral. Didn't ask how I was. Just barreled straight in. Listen, I'm calling because we need to cover some unexpected costs. Megan's party went amazing, but we kind of went overboard. Of course they did. The woman could overspend in a charity shop. You know how it is, you only turn 32 once, right? Unless you're Megan, in which case she'll probably manage it 3 times. In the background I could hear her shrill voice. Tell him about the band. Of course. Kyle launched into it like a cruise ship entertainer. Yeah, Dad, we hired this incredible live band, took everyone to that new steakhouse downtown, and I got Megan this gorgeous diamond bracelet. She deserved the best, you know. Yes, nothing says true love like a gift that needs to be insured. Then he dropped the punchline, but now the bills are coming in, and we're looking at about $15,000 in immediate payments. $15,000 for one party. That's not a celebration. That's armed robbery with appetizers. I did the maths. Loan number 47 in the book of Kyle. Yesterday, I buried my wife. Today my son wanted me to bankroll Megan's midlife crisis cosplay. So can you just wire it today? Megan's really stressed about the bills, and you know how she gets when she's worried. Yes, Kyle. I do. Loud. Very loud. I glanced at Margaret's photo, then back at the neat little columns of numbers that told the story of our financial slaughter. And I said it. 1 syllable, 2 letters, an entire revolution. No. Silence. Sweet, shock silence. Then Kyle spluttered. What do you mean, no? Is there a problem with the bank? No, Kyle. There's a problem with you. I won't be giving you any more money. The cheerful mask cracked instantly. Are you seriously saying no to me right now, after everything we've been through this week? Everything we've been through. As though he'd endured chemotherapy or buried his wife of 40 years. No, what Kyle had been through was running out of champagne at Megan's party. The struggle. You're 35 years old, I said. So what? What does that have to do with helping your son out of a jam? It's not like you can't afford it. In the background, Megan's banshee wail cut through. Tell him we need that money. We already spent it. Of course you did, darling. Spending money you don't have is practically your love language. I said no, I repeated. It felt foreign on my tongue, like tasting freedom for the first time, bitter, but strangely satisfying. Kyle's voice went cold. This is unbelievable. Mom just died and you're being petty about money. She'd want you to help us. Ah yes, the manipulation card. He played it like a Vegas pro. How many times had Margaret and I folded under that line? Family loyalty. Translation, rob yourself blind for the children. I looked at Margaret's picture again. Your mother wanted you at her funeral, I said. Kyle's breathing turned ragged. Fine. We'll figure this out ourselves. Max out more cards. Borrow from Megan's parents. Whatever. But don't expect us to come around much anymore if this is how you're going to be. The classic threat. Access to His Royal Highness, Kyle, revoked if the peasantry failed to pay tribute. For 35 years, it had worked like a charm. I understand, I said calmly. You what? I understand. Take care, Kyle. And then I hung up. First time in decades. The phone sat there afterwards, quiet. No longer an instrument of extortion. Just plastic and wires. I opened my laptop. Scrolled to Kyle's employee file. Tomorrow, we'd be having a different kind of conversation. In an office where I wasn't Dad, the human wallet, but Mr. Foster, his employer. If Kyle wanted to treat me like a stranger, fine. I'd oblige, professionally. By 7:30 a.m. the next morning, I was in the office 2 hours before Kyle's usual performance, as late but charming. His photo was still up on the management wall, him, in a suit I'd bought, grinning like he'd earned something. Today, I looked at that photo differently. Not promise. Not potential. Just entitlement in a tie. I spread his personnel file across my desk like evidence in a trial. 8 years of mediocrity politely documented. Missed deadlines, botched projects, inflated expenses, client complaints. If anyone else had this record, they'd have been fired long ago. But Kyle had family loyalty, and Margaret's gentle he's still learning. Well, apparently he'd been learning how to be incompetent for nearly a decade. At 8:45, I called in Sarah from HR. Her expression said it all, finally. She'd been waiting for this day like Christmas. I'll prepare the termination documents immediately, she said. Not even a flicker of surprise. Security escort, I added. Standard procedure for management terminations. The delicious irony made me want to laugh. I even practiced my speech in the office mirror. Calm. Professional. No emotion. Just the facts. Today Kyle wasn't my son. Today he was just another failed employee. At 9:30, he finally strolled in, 15 minutes late of course. Still chuckling about Megan's party, as if hangovers were a badge of honor. Staff glanced nervously toward my closed office door. He stopped at the coffee machine. Oblivious. I pressed the intercom. Kyle, please come to my office immediately. Sure, Dad, just grabbing my coffee. No, Kyle. Now. The silence that followed told me he'd heard the change. His footsteps approached, heavy. And for the first time in his life, he was walking towards a door he couldn't charm his way back out of. When Kyle opened my office door and saw Sarah from HR sitting there with paperwork, his grin faltered faster than Megan at a discount rack without her size. What's with the formal setup? He asked, still trying the old casual tone, the one that usually works on waitresses and gullible parents. I stayed seated, hands folded, very CEO facing a hostile takeover. Kyle, your employment with Foster Construction is terminated effective immediately. He laughed. The kind of laugh you give when you're praying someone's joking. Very funny, Dad. What's this really about? I slid the papers across the desk. Please review these documents and sign where indicated. He picked them up like they'd been dipped in acid. His face drained as the legalese sank in. You can't be serious. This is our family business. No, Kyle. This is my business. Yours is overspending and being late. I kept my voice calm. Your position has been eliminated due to restructuring. This is about yesterday's phone call, isn't it? Look, I'm sorry about the money thing. We can work this out. Oh yes, Kyle. Because groveling always sounds so convincing when it follows we spent it already. Security will escort you to collect your personal items, I said. That's when he tried the guilt card. Mom wouldn't want this. You know she wouldn't. He leaned in, eyes wide, like a magician about to pull a rabbit from his hat. Unfortunately, the rabbit was just manipulation in a cheap suit. I pressed the security button. This is a business decision, not a personal one. Mike from security appeared in the doorway. Good man, professional. Probably rehearsed for this moment ever since Kyle first tried to expense champagne as client entertainment. Kyle's face burned red. The staff had gathered in the corridor, watching the prince of nepotism being escorted out like a bloke caught shoplifting. Dad, please. His final plea, clinging to a coffee mug and a photo of Megan like they were relics from a failed empire. I have thought about it, Kyle, I said, meeting his eyes for the first time. That's the problem. Through my window, I watched him load his sad little box into the car. Rage, grief, who could tell? From a distance, self-pity looks the same. Sarah came back with the signed paperwork. All access codes have been changed. His computers shut off. I took Kyle's management photo off the wall myself, placed it face down in a drawer. The empty space looked cleaner, like when you finally get chewing gum off your shoe. Then came a knock. My secretary nervous. Mr. Foster, someone's here to see you without an appointment. Designer heels clicked through the lobby. And in stormed Megan. Perfect hair slightly windswept, face like a thundercloud. Kyle trailed behind her, deflated. How dare you humiliate Kyle like this, she bellowed, pointing at me like I was on trial at The Hague. I didn't stand. If she wanted theater, she could take it to Broadway. Kyle shuffled, mortified. Megan, let me handle this. She ignored him, of course. We have bills to pay, Alan. A lifestyle to maintain. This family business belongs to Kyle, too. Private workplace, I said flatly. You need to leave. Her cheeks flushed crimson. We deserve severance pay. 6 months at least. Kyle's worked here 8 years. You owe us. Kyle tried to mumble something like dad, maybe, but Megan cut him off. No, he needs to hear this. I know about wrongful termination laws. Kyle was an at-will employee, I replied evenly. No severance is required. That's when she went nuclear. Margaret would be ashamed of you. You're having some kind of breakdown, aren't you? Just a bitter old man taking out his grief on us. Kyle went pale. Megan, don't. My jaw tightened, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't anger. This was inevitability. Kyle tried again, softer. Dad, I know I messed up with the funeral. I'm sorry. But destroying my career won't bring Mom back. Think about the family. About future grandchildren. Future grandchildren? God help them if Megan teaches them budgeting. I looked at him, my son technically, and thought, what family? Then Megan dropped the bomb. We'll sue for our share of Margaret's estate. Kyle is entitled to half. We know about the life insurance. Margaret left everything to me, I said calmly. That shut her up. For all of 5 seconds. That's impossible. We're consulting a lawyer. I pressed the security button again. Mike and his backup filled the doorway. Employees clustered in the hall, pretending not to enjoy the show. Rome had fallen, and Megan was still demanding severance pay. Megan refused to go quietly, of course. I'm not leaving, she screeched as security closed in. This is theft. This is abuse. Honestly, if she'd thrown in human rights violation, we'd have had the full bingo card. Her resistance was loud but useless, a bit like Kyle at work, really. The entire office got front row seats as she was escorted out like a low-budget reality star booted from a villa. And Kyle? Well, humiliation had officially gone platinum. Watching your wife being dragged out of your ex-job tends to do that. When the noise finally died down, Kyle lingered, desperate for one last attempt. His voice dropped to a whisper. I'm all the family you have left. Touching, really. Like a burglar telling you he's your only company. But instead of breaking me, it clarified everything. I looked at this stranger, wearing my son's face, and delivered the truth. No, you're just someone who used to be my son. And just like that, his face collapsed. For half a second, I glimpsed the little boy who once ran into my arms after school. Then, poof, gone. Replaced by the entitled man-child who traded my wife's funeral for a steakhouse and a live band. He left without another word. I addressed the staff like a true professional, smoothing it over as a personal matter that wouldn't impact operations. Most nodded. They'd witnessed Kyle's talent for incompetence over the years, so this was hardly breaking news. Please ensure Mrs. Foster is never allowed in the building again, I instructed security. Because once you've had a Megan in reception, you don't risk a sequel. Back in my office, hands trembling ever so slightly, I realized the hardest part was over. I looked at Margaret's photograph. I hope you understand. Then, in true widower meets Excel fashion, I opened my laptop. Time to speed up estate planning. Robertson, 2:30 p.m. sorted. Oh, and Kyle's birthday next month? Deleted. Permanently. No cake, no candles, no more obligatory cards that say, to a wonderful son, while you're secretly writing parasite in your head. At 2:30 sharp, I walked into the gleaming law offices of Chun and Associates. Very posh, very we bill by the minute. Robert Chun himself, 20 years a friend, keeper wills, incorporations, and secrets, greeted me with that concerned face people wear when they want to ask, are you okay, but also don't want to get dragged into your family circus. How are you holding up, Alan? He asked gently. I waved off the coffee. No need to pay £4 for something that tastes like burnt soil. I need to make some changes to my estate planning. His professional mask clicked on instantly. Of course. Updating beneficiaries after Margaret's passing is standard. No, I said, pulling out my briefcase. I'm removing Kyle entirely. You'd have thought I'd just confessed to tax fraud. His composure wobbled. Alan, I need to understand what's driving this. So I told him. Every sordid detail. The birthday party. The missed funeral. The diamond bracelet for Megan that should have come with a return policy. Robert's face darkened with each revelation. Friend, lawyer, honorary judge of character. He got it. I want a completely new will, I continued. Everything goes to the Margaret Foster Memorial Foundation. Robert leaned forward, lawyer brain spinning. Alan, I need to make sure you're thinking clearly. I've never been more certain. And out it poured. Scholarships for underprivileged kids. Cancer research funding. Causes Margaret cared about. Actual legacies instead of Megan's handbag collection. Kyle and his future spawn? Explicitly excluded. Let them fight over who gets the toaster. Robert shifted from concerned friend to admiring professional. By the time I laid out the trust structure, asset protection, and long-term governance, he was practically ready to nominate me for Client of the Year. We discussed selling the family home, auctioning Margaret's jewelry, donating everything, except for her wedding ring. That would go with me when the time came. Some things stay sacred, even when everything else rots. What about Kyle's childhood belongings? Robert asked, gently. Donated. Because nostalgia doesn't pay the bills, and frankly, I was allergic to his Lego by then. He did his legal duty, of course, asked if I was mentally sound, making rational decisions, not acting out of grief. I answered with spreadsheets and bullet points. Very sane, very reasonable. Almost boring, really. By the time the witnesses came in and I signed the papers, my hand steady as a rock, it was done. Clean break. No hesitation. My signature inked a future where Kyle got nothing. Not a penny. Not a photo. Not a birthday reminder. Just absence. And strangely, the empty space looked cleaner already. Robert assured me the documents took immediate effect. Kyle was now, in legal terms, disinherited. Or, as I like to call it, promoted to full-time parasite with no benefits package. I want Kyle to receive formal notice, I said, because nothing screams fatherly love like being served papers. Robert rattled through the rest of the protections. Power of attorney? Gone. Medical directives? Kyle nowhere near them. Living will? Ironclad. If I end up in hospital, Kyle won't even get to decide what brand of jelly they feed me. Tomorrow, I'd update all the bank accounts. Every Kyle beneficiary, line crossed out like overdue homework. Robert even offered to help coordinate, which was generous, considering the paperwork pile could kill a man faster than Megan's cooking. The foundation planning was the first thing in days that actually felt peaceful. Scholarships, cancer research, real legacies, not handbags and steakhouse tabs. Robert said Margaret would be proud. For once, I didn't feel like screaming. And this wasn't revenge. Oh no. This was justice. Revenge is petty. Justice comes with notary signatures and a witness in bifocals. As I left Robert's office, my phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from Kyle. Shocking, really. The moment the money tap shuts off, suddenly, I exist. I deleted them without listening. The bin is where his words belong now. Next stop, the Davenport Country Club. The hallowed halls of mahogany, chandeliers, and oil paintings of dead men who probably cheated at bridge. I'd walked those halls for 15 years, treasurer of the board, trusted custodian of old money traditions. The usual pre-meeting chatter buzzed. Leather chairs, fresh coffee, whispers that smelled faintly of scandal. William Hayes, our board president, approached with a sympathetic smile. Alan, the memorial service was beautiful. Margaret would have been pleased. I thanked him, gracious as ever, and then Patricia, Margaret's sister, appeared, wearing her usual perfume of suspicion. I kept looking for Kyle during the service. Where was he? The question I'd been waiting for. Time to drop the bomb. Kyle chose not to attend his mother's funeral. The silence was glorious. Like watching a congregation realize the vicar's just sworn from the pulpit. Patricia blanched. What do you mean, chose not to? So I gave them the exact words. Megan's birthday party was more important. The disgust on their faces was so pure it could have been bottled. Nancy Hayes, never one to waste good gossip, immediately began dialing numbers like she was launching a PR campaign. Within the hour, the Ladies' Bridge Club knew. By dinner, the entire Davenport elite had received the memo. Kyle Foster, son of Margaret, skipped her funeral for cocktails and a cover band. When I went home, I had no idea I'd unleashed a social Armageddon. The first bomb hit Megan at yoga. Halfway through her son's salutation, the instructor stopped her mid-pose. We prefer members with family values. Out she went, still barefoot. Downward dog, indeed. Kyle's humiliation came next. Country Club rescinded his lunch invitation with a polite but very final phone call. Romano's restaurant, where they'd been regulars, suddenly had no tables available ever again. Saturday was the real kicker. His golf foursome, 3 men he'd smugly called mates, ditched him halfway through a game with excuses, so thin you could have read the morning paper through them. Even a pro shop suggested, perhaps another club might suit you better, Mr. Foster. Translation: pack your clubs, you're radioactive. Megan's beloved Bergdorf's boutique turned frosty too. Sales associates, who once fawned, now couldn't find her size. Her credit application mysteriously delayed. The manager suggested she shop elsewhere. Imagine Megan forced into discount retail. Tragic. Professionally, Kyle was finished before he even noticed. Interviews? Cancelled. Lunches? Awkwardly short. His Chamber of Commerce pals suddenly forgot his name. By the time he sat down to pitch himself, they already knew the funeral story. He might as well have worn a sign saying, "We'll trade morals for money." And Megan? Her crowning humiliation arrived at Elite Salon. Appointment cancelled. Other clients whispering about her heartless husband. She stormed out in tears, mascara running faster than her credit score. The newspaper even got in on it, a polite but pointed note in the society column about Kyle's absence at Margaret's memorial. The church, too. Congregation members looking at them like they'd spat in the communion wine. Former friends avoided them in public, eyes darting, lips pursed. Kyle's desperate explanations fell flat, because once you're branded a man who chose cocktails over his mother's coffin, well, let's just say, good luck finding a golf partner. Kyle insisted I was exaggerating, as though an entire town had spontaneously coordinated a vendetta against him for sport. Unfortunately for him, Davenport's residents had already held their trial, and the jury of bridge players, golf partners, and church ladies had returned a unanimous verdict. Guilty of being an ungrateful prat. Megan's breakdown was inevitable. She confronted Kyle in full operatic hysteria, demanding he fix this immediately, as if reputation repair were a quick job you could book through customer service. Kyle admitted he didn't know how, which was about as shocking as water being wet. Megan, in turn, threatened to leave if things didn't improve. Marital bliss at its finest. I heard about these consequences from multiple sources, and yes, it was satisfying. Davenport had spoken. Family loyalty, respect for the dead, and basic human decency. 3 little things Kyle had treated like optional extras, now being violently repossessed. Margaret was being honored the best way this community knew how, by socially executing anyone who disrespected her. Poetic, really. Then came breakfast. My phone rang. The bank manager's voice carried that polite panic reserved for doctors delivering bad news. Mr. Foster, Kyle and Megan's mortgage payment is 30 days overdue. You're still guaranteeing the loan, correct? I paused. Coffee in one hand, toast in the other. Not for much longer, I said, already tasting the satisfaction. The next morning, I marched into First National Bank's marble lobby. Oil portraits of old money glowering down, as if personally offended by Kyle's overdraft. David Harrison, the bank manager, looked like a man about to ask for a kidney. He shuffled Kyle's papers nervously, pointing out the obvious. The mortgage was 60 days overdue. $18,000 in arrears. I sat there, hands folded like a saint. I understand you need my guarantee payment. David exhaled with relief. Yes, as you've done for the past 3 months. I'm withdrawing my guarantee, effective immediately. The poor man nearly fainted into his mahogany desk. 8 years of guarantees, gone in one crisp declaration. I slid Robert Chen's pre-drafted documents across the table like a magician pulling a rabbit from a hat. Legal, binding, and signed in triplicate. David dialed his legal department in a last-ditch prayer. The lawyer confirmed what he dreaded. I was well within my rights. Foreclosure proceedings would begin. Please expedite the process, I said, savoring the moment. Because nothing says poetic justice like a bank reclaiming your son's McMansion. Meanwhile, Kyle was on job interview number 10. His pitch? Seeking new challenges. The subtext? I skipped my mother's funeral for a birthday party, but please hire me anyway. His interviewers' eyes glazed over faster than cheap donuts. We'll be in touch, they said, which, as everyone knows, is corporate code for over my dead body. He shuffled out to his Toyota, which had all the dignity of a fallen king's carriage. The BMW had already been repossessed. Apparently German engineering doesn't come with a morally bankrupt son payment plan. That same afternoon, Megan discovered her personal apocalypse at Nordstrom. She tried to buy mascara, replacement for the one she'd cried into oblivion, only for her platinum card to be declined. Tragic. Mascara denied. There must be some mistake, she told the sales associate, who looked as though she'd rather be anywhere else. The truth came swiftly via customer service. The co-signer, that would be me, had pulled the plug. The account was suspended, pending full payment. Public humiliation complete, with an audience of discount-hungry onlookers. That evening, they returned home to find the electricity cut. Unpaid bills over $1,200. Candlelight dinner, but not the romantic kind. Megan stormed around the house in designer heels, clicking like a metronome of rage. She blamed Kyle entirely, and for once, I agreed with her. Fix this, or I'm gone, she spat, venom dripping from every syllable. Kyle, in desperation, applied for new credit cards. Declined. Debt-to-income ratio laughable. Employment non-existent. Megan's maxed-out cards were useless. Bankruptcy crept into conversation. The uninvited dinner guest that never leaves. Their solution? A garage sale. Years of luxury items, gifts, and bragging rights reduced to sad little price tags. Wedding presents that cost friends hundreds sold for $20. Watching their empire collapse piece by piece. Now that was priceless. Former friends still drove past their house, but wouldn't stop. Can't say I blame them. Who wants to risk being offered Kyle's golf clubs like some cursed relic? Speaking of which, he actually sold them to a teenager. Nothing says rock bottom like haggling with a 14-year-old who thinks Titleist is a Pokemon. Megan's jewelry collection vanished piece by piece to bargain hunters. Her shrieking punctuating every sale like some tragic opera performed in a car boot sale car park. The real entertainment, though, came when the BMW was repossessed in broad daylight. The repo man did his job with the dead-eyed efficiency of someone who's seen it all before, while Kyle stood there pulling his old receipts out of the glove box like a man clinging to Titanic deck chairs. Megan screamed, neighbors peered, and somewhere in heaven Margaret probably rolled her eyes. That evening, I drove past, watched the chaos from the comfort of my car. It wasn't cruelty. It was consequence. Margaret always said actions have results, though I doubt she ever imagined her son would end up learning that lesson while shouting at a repo truck. Then came Kyle's desperate call, begging for a meeting. Important, he said, as if I hadn't heard that line every time he wanted money for emergencies, like ski trips and luxury handbags. Still, I agreed. Morrison Park. The same place I'd once taught him to ride a bike, back when his eyes held love instead of the glint of a loan application. I looked at the photo of young Kyle on his bicycle, then put it face down. Enough nostalgia. 6 months later, the county foreclosure auction. The courthouse steps were packed with bargain hunters and gossip-hungry onlookers. Kyle and Megan stood apart, looking like extras in a particularly cruel reality TV show. I sat across the street in my black sedan, binoculars in hand, watching their final humiliation. Opening bid, $280,000, the auctioneer droned, sounding like a man reading his shopping list. The bidding narrowed down to two, a contractor and a woman in a sharp navy suit. Kyle squinted, whispered to Megan, His suspicion became certainty the moment Robertson arrived and gave her a polite nod. "That's Dad's lawyer," Kyle muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "He wouldn't. He couldn't," Megan hissed. "Oh, but he could. $317,000. Going once. Going twice. Sold." The gavel came down, Kyle's legs gave out, and Megan released a scream so dramatic I half expected pigeons to scatter theatrically into the sky. I finally stepped out of my car, walked towards a courthouse. Kyle's eyes met mine, and in that moment he realized the entire downfall had been engineered. The guarantees, the timing, the surgical precision of it all. My secretary, Sarah Mitchell, revealed as the bidder for Mitchell Holdings, LLC. Subtle? Hardly. Effective? Absolutely. Kyle staggered towards me. "How could you do this to us?" I shrugged. "I didn't. The bank did." Technically true. Deliciously infuriating. Megan's final act was a wild lunge, screeching accusations about elder abuse and mental incompetence, while Robertson calmly documented her meltdown like Attenborough narrating a nature special. Security dragged her away, a scene that provided, frankly, excellent evidence of their character. 2 weeks later, the moving truck arrived. It looked pitifully small for a life once inflated by arrogance and Amex Platinum. Megan threw clothes into suitcases with all the grace of a hurricane in heels. Kyle, meanwhile, wrapped Margaret's crystal vase with the tenderness of a man finally realizing sentiment doesn't fit on eBay. Neighbors watched, but didn't help. Social exile, complete. That evening, Megan delivered her final performance. "I can't live like this anymore." Translation: she'd been texting her ex, "I'm married into a wealthy family, not this." And the encore? "Your father was right about us. Honestly, I couldn't have written better myself." Kyle spent his last night wandering through the empty house, haunted by echoes of better times. In the kitchen drawer, he found a note Margaret had hidden long ago. "Kyle, remember we love you." Genuine tears followed. The first in years, I suspect. Regret, too little, too late. Sarah Mitchell handed me the keys the next day. My decision? Renovate the house, then donate it to a deserving family. A real family. Margaret would have approved. That evening, my phone rang. Kyle. Pay phone. Motel. His mobile cut off, no doubt. Caller ID flashed his name. I let it go to voicemail. Justice sometimes requires patience. The final confrontation could wait. He turned up at my door at 7:30 p.m. on a November evening. The kind of night when even the foxes can't be bothered to rummage in the bins. Kyle stood there, finger hovering over the doorbell for a full minute, as if pressing it would detonate the building. I watched from the living room window, cup of tea in hand, debating whether I should open the door or just switch the lights off and pretend I'd gone to bed at 7:30 like a pensioner. Eventually, I opened it. Didn't invite him in, of course. I wasn't about to let that energy into my carpets. The sight nearly shocked me, though. Unshaven, wrinkled shirt, jeans sagging like he'd borrowed them from a scarecrow. He'd aged 5 years in 6 months, which is quite impressive when you think about it. His voice trembled as he launched into his little redemption monologue. Laundromat flat, gas station job. Megan running off with her ex, who owns a chain of restaurants. You know, the usual bedtime story. He spoke about lessons learned, about what really matters, about wanting to be the son Mom always wanted me to be. Charming. Except every line sounded rehearsed, like he'd copied it off a How to Win Dad Back blog written by someone in a much nicer flat. So I asked him the basics. When's your mother's birthday? Wrong. What's her favorite flower? Wrong again. Roses, he guessed. As if Margaret ever liked roses. Daisies were her thing. It hit me then. He'd never really known her at all. He'd been too busy knowing the inside of wine lists and golf catalogs. His frustration slipped out, the old Kyle peeking through. This is ridiculous. Just tell me what you want me to say. Ah, there he was. I almost missed him. Eventually, the begging arrived, eviction notices, promises to pay me back, the usual ATM pitch. And of course, the trump card. Mom would be heartbroken to see us like this. That nearly worked. Nearly. But then I remembered exactly what Margaret thought. I fetched her journal, still tucked in her nightstand, and read her own words to him. I'm worried Kyle only loves our money. What if we've raised a child who can't love? His silence was louder than any of his speeches. So I told him the truth. Margaret had changed her will before she died. She'd left him nothing because she already knew he'd waste it. His mask dropped then and outpoured the venom, contesting the will, calling me senile, the usual tantrum. His parting shot? I hope you die alone in this house. Honestly, if he thought that was original, he should have workshopped it more. I closed the door on him. Quietly. No slamming. Just closed it, walked to the kitchen, and put the kettle back on. He pounded on the door for several minutes. I stirred sugar into my tea. His car eventually drove away. Peace finally. 1 year later, I stood in Riverside Cemetery with daisies in my hand. Real daisies, the kind Margaret actually loved. Birds sang, flowers bloomed, and for once life didn't feel like a bad joke. I told her about the foundation's first year. 20 scholarships awarded. $200,000 to cancer research. A community center going up in her name. Justice, dignity, and her legacy carried on. Then, the update she'd probably have found funniest of all. Kyle working at Sam's Gas on Route 6. Divorced, broke, socially invisible. Megan remarried to her restaurateur ex-Justice, had finished the job life started. On my way home, I stopped at Morning Glory Diner. Kyle was there, behind the counter in a stained uniform, eyes hollow. Our gazes locked. I ordered coffee. Treated him like any other service worker. He asked quietly, "How are you doing, Dad?" "I'm well, thank you." He whispered, "I know sorry isn't enough." "No," I said, "it isn't." For the first time, I saw something close to humility. Maybe even honesty. He admitted it was never about the money, that I'd wanted him to love me, not my wallet. Finally, he understood what Margaret and I had both known for years. His tears seemed genuine this time. Mine didn't come. I'd already cried them years ago. I did what I had to do, I told him. Margaret would have approved. I regret nothing. He nodded, broken but accepting. I deserved all of it. And for once, finally, I believed him.